Hi guys, hope you've had a super awesome day. I've never said those two words together before, super awesome day. Anyway, well, here we are. I guess we're talking about back to school, and I guess the back to school season itself can actually be quite hard on children. That's absolutely for sure. By now, most children would have adjusted back into a school routine and are coping well. However, this isn't the case for all children. Emotional problems include depressive and anxiety symptoms, and physical complaints can include things like headaches and withdrawn behaviours. We just got our guest, which I'm just going to invite into the screen, so hang on for a sec. To the screen. Did you know actually in Australia there's roughly about 1.5 million children to 7 going to school. Hey Kirsty, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Cool. I was just doing my little intro and I was just saying that in Australia there's roughly about 1.5 million children aged 6 to 7 going to school. Now, this actually means that there's roughly around 200,000 children are dealing with some kind of an emotional problem whilst they're going to school. These problems are becoming worse as the children are actually sort of growing and sort of like progressing through school. The same study that discovered this found that 3 years later, when the same cohort of children were between 10 to 11, an additional 60,000 had developed symptoms of depression and or anxiety. So this is really serious stuff, and we really need to focus on it. So tonight we are so excited, as always, to speak to this absolute superstar of a woman who we absolutely love to bits. Everyone say hi. This is Kirsty Russell from Positive Special Needs Parenting, and a little bit of an introduction. Kirsty has 2 children with additional needs, being autism, albinism, anxiety, sensory processing disorder, and vision impairment. But through sharing her experiences, she's actually now recognised by many as a really important resource for special needs parenting. And we love her to bits. And we're just so thrilled and honoured to have her as one of our partners here at Kittypedia. So first of all, how are you doing?
I'm good. Now I've worked out to try and get that out of the way. It's always awkward doing video, isn't it?
No, it's just technology. We have problems all the time with this lovely internet that we have in Australia,
Yes.
the first world country. So, for everybody watching, we've recently published an article because he's been how to beat the back to school blues. Now, for somebody who hasn't read the article yet, could you maybe give us a little bit of an overview, but also a bit of an introduction to your background and what sort of prompted you and inspired you to write the article?
All right. So I've dealt with anxiety with my own kids over the years, and I've actually got 3 kids. So I've got an extra child who doesn't have any diagnoses, but even she has even at the age of 8 has a bit of anxiety. So I wrote this with the background of trying from ways that I've been able to help my own kids, because I know it's a huge issue for parents. And your child doesn't have a diagnosis to, suffer anxiety in the back to school blues. So I wanted to write it just to introduce people to the idea that if their kids are exhibiting some of these symptoms, if they have headaches or a bit of school refusal, or they're just not enjoying school as much as they had been, that there are things to try and to look at doing sort of before you sort of look at other at other reasons. So
yeah. And we've got some really key points in this article which we're going to sort of speak about with question number 2.
Yep.
So we've got lots to chat about. So we've got the 3 key questions, so should we maybe get stuck straight into them?
Let's do that.
Question number 1, which is what are the signs your child may be having trouble with the return to school?
Yep.
So what are the signs?
Well, I think these are fairly, we'd know your child basically would be acting sort of out of I suppose their normal self. They might seem unsettled. They might seem a bit stressed. Little things might really start to irritate them. They might, bicker more with their siblings, for instance. They might be sort of quieter and seem to be worrying a little bit more. They can have physical symptoms too. So my kids will often have a stomach ache, or say they have a headache if they're feeling stressed, because they don't know how to express these feelings, you know, that they might be holding on to. So for a lot of kids, particularly younger kids, it might be quite difficult to sort of get to the cause of it, or really to know it's anxiety, because, you know, they're still developing their vocabulary and still developing their understanding of what sort of these physical cues might mean as well. But I think the main one there is, if your child is just not their self, if they're not finding enjoyment in what they normally, you know, enjoy, if they seem to be more reluctant to go to school, that could point to, you know, to some anxiety. And there could be, you know, there could be different reasons for that, but it's basically having a look at, sort of recognizing the signs, I guess, and then having a look at ways that you might be able to help them. But I think it's really trying to be in tune with your child. And, you know, most of us will sort of know when things aren't quite right.
And so in your experience, have you sort of gone through this with your children, and how did you sort of notice the signs, and how did you then, I guess, deal with it?
Yeah, I suppose with my kids, with my son, obviously he'd received a diagnosis before school, so we're aware that these things could be in play for him, for his anxiety, and for his autism. But with my daughter, she was diagnosed in her first year of kindergarten, and so the signs that we saw with her got to be quite extreme before we knew really what was going on. She would hold on to me. I think for the first 3 terms of kindergarten, she just held on to me and wouldn't let go. We needed to get a teacher's aide to help. She was that worried. She would sometimes hide under the desk at school. She'd come home and just be, yeah, sorry, yeah.
So and that behaviour was out of character.
Yes, yeah, for her. You know, she'd come home and just be, you know, just exhausted emotionally, you know, as well as physically, and was just not happy. And it was really horrible to watch and to see as a parent. And so by the end of that year, you know, we'd done some investigation, and she received an autism and an anxiety diagnosis, and then we were able to give her the support she needed. But yeah, it's helpless. I think for a lot of parents, you feel helpless because you know your child's struggling, but it's just what to do, how to help them, and, you know, what is the root cause of the problem. And when they're really young, that can be really tricky to tease out.
So in that situation with your daughter, it was kindergarten. So she at that stage is like 4 years old.
Or 5, yeah.
Was it 4-year-old kinder?
No, that was sorry, kindergarten New South Wales. So she was 5. So would be prep, whatever sorry. No, that's okay. Different states, different things. Yeah. So so she was still quite young at that stage. She'd just come out of preschool, and we just found that she just exhibited sort of behaviours at school and at home that wasn't consistent with, you know, with who she was, and so we're eventually able to get to the cause of that and to support her. But it can be all sorts of things. Some kids might not eat, you know, have a lack of appetite, or just not even want to do the stuff that they're really interested in, and then that's, you know, obviously something that's out of the ordinary and cause for concern.
Yeah. And that's what I was sort of saying in the introduction. So emotional problems include the depressive and anxiety symptoms, which is heart-wrenching to think. And, of course, physical complaints such as headaches and withdrawal behaviours. And like you said, they may not want to eat and that sort of stuff as well. So definitely, as you just said, behaviours that are out of their normal character. I think this sort of leads perfectly into question number 2, which we get to speak about the article and what you've written, which is really awesome. So question number 2 is, you know, what can parents do to help their children through this?
Well, I think that there's a few things. I think the biggest tip for parents is to just have a bit of patience for their kids, and to understand that their kids may not be able to explain what's going on. Some of them won't have. I know my kids don't, sort of with their autism, don't always have the sort of self-awareness to really understand sort of what's happening, and so they don't really connect that a stomach ache or a funny butterflies in the tummy could actually be, you know, anxiety. So it's really, I suppose, for us parents to have a little bit of patience with our kids, and sort of to try and get them to describe how they're feeling, I suppose, as specifically as possible, so we can still help them to connect the dots. So I think talking to them and listening to them is really important, and I think that's probably one of the more important things to do, and to try and to do that sort of with patience, because it can be really, I know it can be frustrating as well as sort of gut-wrenching, sort of to try and get your kids and to rationalise and to talk to them and say, hey, school's fine, etc. When clearly they're really struggling to sort of you know, to go and have any sort of, I suppose, excitement or happiness in going. But some other practical things that parents can do is to actually give quiet time to their kids. So particularly when we go back to school, it's often the time that we you know, run in and do everything. You know, we get back into sport, get back into sort of after school activities. And you can do those things, but I think it's still really important to give our kids some quiet time so they can actually decompress, and they can, even if it's 30 minutes, so just so they can sort of find themselves, have some peace and calm, you know, and then get them into homework or then get them off to their activity or whatever. So that can certainly help. That can give your kids a chance to centre themselves and to just recover from the day. So obviously,
do you usually do that when they just come home from school straight away? Like when do you, that soon as they come home, there's no technology?
I try and do that. It works for my kids to do that. So I get them, they unpack, they come home, they unpack their bags, except my son, who consistently forgets or doesn't want to unpack his bag. But then, exactly. But yeah, they will then have a little bit of quiet time, and I'll just let them have their time to themselves. You know, they might read, whatever. But for my kids, that works, and they need that, because I notice on the days where, I think a Wednesday my daughter does drama, and I have to drop the kids off and then take my daughter pretty much straight away and you know, drive 30 minutes to get her to her class. So on those days, you know, the car trip sort of helps act as her decompression point and things. But I do notice on those days when my kids don't have that time, they tend to struggle a little bit more, and it's harder to get them to do homework and to get them, you know, to be engaged and stuff. So I found myself that helps, but that might, you know, and I think that's something worth trying if parents are having some, you know, some concerns or struggling in how to balance all that out.
But we think about it ourselves. If we've had like a busy day at work or whatever it is, all the time we'll be driving home with no radio, and it just completely makes sense. We do that ourselves to be able to just balance ourselves out. So it's just being mindful enough to be able to do that for the children, and making sure that happens every.
Yeah, I think so. It's certainly, as I said, it's helped us, and I think it could help others to try that as well. But it's just little things, because our kids, when you think about it, the pressures they have at school in the day, they've got to be social, they've got to be you know, ready to learn. They need to be organised. They need to sort of know where they're going and what they're doing, particularly in high school. So it's a lot. There's a lot going on at any given point in time. So obviously, just like us, we come home from work. You know, we don't really want to sort of come home and rush around, and, you know I don't want to. But yeah, giving them that time to decompress, particularly if they're exhibiting, you know, signs of anxiety or that I think can definitely be one way to try to see how they go. So yeah. But there's other things, just, you know, quickly, but, you know, think about, particularly if in that initial stage, most of us will be over that now, but easing back into after school activities, it might be that, you know, you give them a week of school before you head back to that. Do you know what I mean? And some after school activities will specifically start a week later than the school term, to give people that time to acclimatise. Limiting homework's another one. I think, you know, our schools knows not to give homework straight up, but some schools will start sort of straight up. And I think that you just need to get the kids back into routine before that happens. I think limiting that, if it's a significant issue, talking to the school, you know, there's no reason why you can't request for it to be limited or to be postponed. So if that's going to make things easier for your child, I totally go for that as an option to do. And also introducing routines. And so this is sort of more what kids on the spectrum we will often do. But I think any child will benefit from a routine. So if you say, okay, we come home, you have half an hour to rest, then we'll do homework, or we'll have a snack, then we do homework, whatever, and just have just some set sort of expectations. That can really help manage anxiety as well with kids, because a lot of it is built on uncertainty, or they feel that they're not sure what's going to happen next. They're not sure if they'll be capable of what they need to do. And in some cases, some kids don't know exactly what to do next. Do you know what I mean? So it sort of having a routine can actually help, you know, direct them and guide them and say, this is what we're going to do. We're going to have some rest time first. We're going to have a snack. Then we'll do our homework, and then it's free time or whatever. So I think that's another thing that helps.
Yeah, and as we were just talking offline before, you know, the Autism Spectrum Australia aspect is actually revised the rates here in Australia. It's actually from 1 to 100 to 1 to 70. So that's basically, you know, it's an increase of about 40%. So it's one in every 70 people. And what we were just saying offline before, that autism is actually not necessarily on the rise in Australia. We're actually becoming more likely at recognising and diagnosing autism in people of all ages. And I think that, you know, being able to see the signs, especially what we're back to school and kindergarten, is something that we may be able to sort of recognise autism diagnosis. You know, you've had some experience in that space, is that right?
Yeah. So I've obviously I've got two kids on the spectrum, so I've learned a lot about autism myself, and I've got a lot of friends and family as well. And I've actually worked with Aspect to deliver some presentations to parents as well.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I recently actually did a professional development day for teachers and for parents together. Worked really, really well. It helped them come together and understand. But I think that's the important thing, is to that autism itself is, it's becoming more and more common, but it is mainly because people, you know, the diagnostic processes are better. We're picking them up. Schools are much more on board with sort of referring kids and noticing sort of when they might have to be referred and looked further. So I don't think that's a bad thing. What that does is that ensures that kids are getting the help that they need, and that we as parents are understanding the support that we need to give them, because, you know, the support I give my two oldest children is different to the support, you mean, they get all similar, but my youngest child doesn't need the same support, but she's still benefiting from what I'm doing sort of for her siblings. So I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. It also means that awareness is growing, and that most of us will have had some interaction or will have some interaction with someone on the spectrum. And I think that's a good opportunity for us to learn, sort of, you know, to be more inclusive, and to think about different practices that can include everybody, sort of. So I think that's the way, I would like, you know, to look at it, and for people to look at it. And that's why I suppose I call myself positive special needs parenting, because I'm trying to demystify and destigmatise this stuff, and help parents find the positives. So, I mean, if they get a diagnosis, it's not the end of the world. It's not a tragedy for your child. It gives you an answer. It gives you a path forward, so we can work and give your child the support they need.
Yeah. And like we were saying before also, that, you know, a lot of schools have their own full-time or part-time psychologist that will help treat children, and if they don't, you know, parents can actually get from like a Medicare rebate for a portion of the psychologist fee, which is up to about 12 sessions. But there is an organisation, government-run organisation called Kids Matter, and it was developed by mental health professionals and education and childcare staff to be able to support children. So this is something we can put the link at the bottom of the interview, kidsmatter.edu.au. So it's another option, I guess, for parents if they're just wanting to be able to look for some additional support and that sort of stuff. And the only other, before we get into the last, the third question, but I wanted just to ask, you know, a lot of parents with children on the spectrum, I guess, may sort of have like settling in strategies. Is this something that you've done before? Like, for example, before the school day actually starts, parents like sort of going through maybe what's going to happen for like on that particular day, so they know what to expect. Is that something that you've done before at all?
Yeah, and I've done that in the past, and we have a routine in the morning now. The kids are older, so in the past I've done visuals. So visual schedules are very big, particularly with younger kids. So you can actually mark out, you know, you get dressed, you know, you have your breakfast, you know, so you can put in order what's going to happen, and that can help encourage the kids to keep to a routine and to a schedule. It shows them what's happening, but also keeps them on task. So it's good. It's good for every kid, really, to do that. It's teaching them quite a number of executive functioning skills for everyday life. But now my kids are a bit older, we sort of have a more flexible routine. So my older two kids will look on their computers each morning to see what subjects they have, so they know what books to put in their bag. You know, we have a routine where my son will, you know, get his Fitbit. He's got a Fitbit to keep an eye on his heart rate and to try and help with anxiety. That's really cool as well. It's also good for time. Yeah, so there's some really good tools out there, but we know he has a routine to get his phone, get his Fitbit, all this stuff, so that we and to take his medication, so that we have all that built in into sort of a routine, and that helps us. But that's taken a lot of time to do. But we also have a setup, and I've written posts about this before in how to get organised, and how getting yourselves and having a place for everything, and encouraging your kids to put their own things away is actually sets up a routine and sets up a schedule that will make them more self-sufficient as they go along as well. So there's just little things. It's just systematizing, that the word, your life. So just trying to, if there's a way that you can make it easier and streamlined for yourself, because there's no way I want to run around like my kids have had meltdowns in the morning because they don't have the right socks, or they've lost the note that I was supposed to sign, or all these little things can derail the morning. So if you can take as much of that uncertainty out as you can, that really, it helps you to maintain your sanity, but it also helps your child sort of be calm and avoid. I've had the issue where we've had sort of meltdowns in the car on the way to school, and it's just been too hard, to get my kids there, because they're just so upset and so consumed, by what to me is the smallest little issue, but to them it's been a huge deal, and it really does, and it can derail, the entire day. So I think certainly having processes and routines in place throughout the day really helps. And if your child might eventually not use them, but I think they're great for any child, not just for kids on the spectrum. Yeah.
And I think even, this is like just taking my skills. So as I sort of grow and sort of go to university and work, to be able to have that structure in the morning, and or preparing stuff the night before and seeing their parents do all this sort of stuff, taking life skills. Yes, it's going to help to reduce anxiety and stress in the short term, but definitely to be able to set up, really good sort of structure later on in their life, sort of, so to speak. Well, let's get stuck into that third question. How can I find more patience as a parent when I'm all out?
And we all will be. I often used to joke that I just didn't. I've had to develop patience. I was not born with it naturally. I've had to cultivate it, and I think if I can do it, anyone can. But I think it's really, in the end, there's a couple of things. One is to sort of understand that the behaviours your child is exhibiting is usually a communication. So they're not doing things to annoy you. They're not doing things on purpose to be difficult. Most of the behaviours our kids exhibit are sort of a cry for help or a communication. They're communicating. It's the only way they can sort of get it out. If you're having school refusal, you're having meltdowns in the morning, that sort of thing, we've got to try and just don't take it personally. This is not directed at you. This is your child trying to make sense of what's going to happen in the day. So I really think that's the first step, because once you take yourself out of it, you take the personal out of it, so much easier to deal with it. And that's the only way I can do it. So I need to say, even if my son swears at me, it doesn't bother me anymore, because I know he's not swearing at me. He's swearing because that's how he, gets out the anger and his frustration. So I think for a lot of us, that's one thing to do it, to sort of really take the personal out and not see your child as misbehaving or doing this on purpose. They are reacting to a situation that they can't control or they can't actually adequately deal with. So that's really the first step there. And the second one is for us to actually try and find time for ourselves, so we're not sort of as stressed. So I suppose that goes into self-care, which is something else that sort of I've talked a lot about. So giving us time out where we can. I think sometimes we've got to look at time differently. We sometimes think that self-care is going to a day spa or having a day out or, a weekend away, when self-care really should just be 5 or 10 minutes you devote yourself every day. And if you can sort of change your mindset to go, okay, well, I'm not going to get an hour out of my day, but I've got 10 minutes. So, you're thinking more purposefully about the time you have. I think that can really help, because that does help with patience, because you've given yourself, you might have given yourself 2 goes at Candy Crush, or, or read a chapter of a book, or actually had a cup of tea that's hot and in peace. But those things, they still matter. So it's those little things. So I was talking to you beforehand, I'm just insanely busy all the time, but I managed to read a chapter of my book while I was waiting for my daughter at speech this afternoon. I did some Sudoku and stuff. I do that before I go to bed. So I try and build in a few little things, and I try and take advantage of those opportunities. So I think having the mindset to know that your child is, not doing this to you, but also giving yourself space to have that downtime during the day as well, those two things can really help, give you the patience that you may lack or not be so good at the moment.
Yeah, and you don't realize until you actually do give yourself that time. It's almost like a cold shower. Like you feel so much more refreshed afterwards, and you don't realize that the quality of everything in your life is going to be enhanced because you've actually just given yourself some energy.
Yeah.
What's the word? Corny as it sounds, but no one, you can't pour from an empty cup. You actually do need to keep putting energy back into yourself, and that's critical in all aspects. So, yeah, they're all really, really valid points. And I think that the article itself and everything we've spoken about tonight, I'm sure it's going to help a lot of families. If anyone else would like to get in touch with you and or join your group, or how can they find you? Where do they find you?
Yep. Well, I have a page called Positive Special Needs Parenting, so feel free to come and follow me there. I also have a group called Positive Special Needs Parents. So it's a secure group that people can share experiences, ask questions. So feel free to do that. And then also I've got a website imaginatively called Positive Special Needs Parents, parenting.com. But yeah, so it's, I know. But look, at any time people can message me, but probably the Facebook page is the best place to find it. It's easy. Everyone's on Facebook. And then they can there's links to the website and to the group there. But no, welcome people to come along. I share a mix of memes and links and sort of useful information. It's really just trying to, be in it together and help each other and to try and get the best out of life, because we can do that whatever the situation. And that's, I think, but it's to do with us and making that choice. So that's what I'm, in that corny way. Yeah.
Well, look, thank you for all your wisdom, all your information. And as always, we just love chatting with you and can't wait to chat with you and see you again soon. So thank you so much. Thank you, my love.
No worries. Yeah, thanks, Rach. Good to see you too. Bye-bye, everybody. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.